Okay, a little more buckets of rain. Um, so I wanted to just talk in general about a couple of things about this song. Um, See if I can put it all together. So, first of all, Buckets of Rain in the key of E is basically a 12 bar, it's the same as a 12 bar blues. It's not played in a blues style, even though it is sort of a blues song. Buckets of Rain, Buckets of Tears, kind of a sad song in a way, just not really played in a typical blues style, though it could be. You could take the song and actually play it to a slow blues groove and it would work just fine. I may even demonstrate that a little bit. But anyway, what I have written out on that first sheet is basically just the chords to a 12 bar blues. We have 4 measures of E, which as we know we're in E tuning, so we're just hitting all the open strings. And then it goes up to A for 2 measures, and if we wanted to, we could just, because we are in E tuning, we could just bring our first finger up here and bar it, and there's our A chord. Back to the E, and up to the B for 2 measures, and back to E. So there's your 12 bars or 12 measures. Now in the Doc Watson version, which we'll talk about a little bit, in the third line down, in parentheses, I have the A chord. That's because in the Doc Watson version, they go from B, they go down to an A for a measure, and then an E, back to the E. And that's the way they do it in the Doc Watson version. I'm just going to play, now they do it in a bluegrass style. Bob Dylan, I would say, did it in a kind of a rockin' style. The Doc Watson version is a bluegrass style. So the picking would basically just be switch to the A chord after 4 measures. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that one time through. So I would recommend even just to practice the chords and get a better understanding of this, that you play along with the Doc Watson version. And if it's a little quick, just bring it down to the 3/4 speed and play along with it there. It's still beneficial. I just always make sure when you're doing your play-alongs that what you're listening to is louder. It should be louder than what you are. You should be able to hear yourself, but you want to be able to stay with the music. So you want that actually to be a little bit louder, and you just view yourself as a guitarist in that band, as a rhythm guitarist in that band, and so you shouldn't be out in front. You should be in the background. But just so you know, I'm going to just play through the chords once or twice, and the picking pattern I'm going to be using is just basically going back and forth between these 2 strings. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? That's all I'm going to be doing in the right hand. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Buckets of rain. And then it just repeats. And that's essentially the rhythm to the entire song. But once again, good to practice it in that style. going back to the reasons that we use when we're doing a song. We want to explore it from as many angles as we possibly can, because that helps us to really understand the song and not just be focused in on finger movements, which are purely physical and technical ideas. We want to be far more interested in what's happening musically. And that's what's happening with Buckets of Rain. It's essentially a 12-bar blues in the key of E, which can be played in any key because it's a 12, well, any song can be played in any key, but especially blues tunes because they tend to be quite simple. So that's the first thing I have on the page, down the 3 lines. What I have down on line 4 is what Bob Dylan uses when he's playing the solo in between his verses. So from the Bob Dylan standpoint, look at the song as essentially having 3 different phases, 3 different parts. You have the opening part, correct? And then we have the part where he sings. Now, you could sing along with it, but we also worked out an arrangement. So this would be the equivalent of Bob Dylan singing. And we had okay? That's part 2. That's the actual singing, the vocal, the verse. And then we have part 3, the little solo section. So what I have written out there, and it only takes that 1 line, is we're up here on 10, open, and 10. 1 and 2. And then we bring it up to 12 and 12. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 4. And then he just goes back down and plays. And he does that twice. And in doing that twice, he fills the first 4 measures in the 12-bar blues, so to speak. Okay? So we have 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 4. Then it just continues on the same. So forth. Okay? So that's part 3. And then he goes back and he sings again. Okay, so to make that clear, I'm going to go ahead and play through it and demonstrate that. So I'm going to start with the intro, the way he starts the song, and then he sings, and then I don't remember how many verses he does, but he may do 2 verses, and then he finally gets to the solo, which is part 3. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the intro, I'm going to play a verse, and then I'm going to play the solo, and then go back to the verse. Intro, verse or vocal, solo, back to the vocal. Because in reality, unless you're playing along with Bob Dylan, you can do this really in any order that you want. The main thing you want to understand is that there are essentially these 3 sections in the Dylan version. Okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he sings. Solo. And then he sings another verse. There's the three parts. Before I go any further, what I have down at the bottom is I have a revised part of the actual vocal arrangement. This part here, where we're doing that part there. I've redone that. You don't have to do it this way, but I wanted to show you the change that I made because I like it better. It often is the case when you're working on an arrangement, you may discover, well, hey, this is another way to do it, and I kind of like this better. And I actually like this better than doing it this way. You got all the love, baby, honey, baby, I can stand, whatever he says there. This is basically, this takes place on the B chord. So what I have is I have this. Now it may be hard to play, in which case you might throw it out, but I am able to play it on my guitar. And what I have there is 7, open, 7, 7, 9, and I'm playing it like that. And then with my first finger, I catch that high 7. So I have 9, 9, 9, 7, 7, 9. Like that. As opposed to this. Okay, so you may be saying to yourself, well, they sound pretty identical, and they do. The reason I like this is because I can incorporate the low E string, so I can be a little freer on my strum. When you're doing the original version, you kind of have to leave the low E string out and just focus on making sure your chord starts on the next string, which is very doable, obviously. I just enjoy being able to just kind of keep the strum going freely. And then it finishes up the second measure, 9, 7, 8, 7, 9, 7, 8, and then the E chord. So let me show you how that sounds all put together. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's when you're playing the arrangement. You know, you're playing the. So we're on that open E chord there. That gives us all the time to, because you kind of really have to land it. Coming off that open E, you just have to land that. And it's got to come off on that and a 4. Let me play that a couple of times the new way and kind of count through it. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you got to be right back on that 1, which is at the very bottom line. And then it just continues on the way it normally does with that suspension. What I mean that by the suspension is the right? Okay. So let's see. So that's essentially what I wanted to talk about. Buckets of Rain, essentially a 12-bar blues, Doc Watson version. And you know what I say about singing. Doesn't matter if it sounds any good. Sorry, I dropped my pick. Because I'm singing here, and it probably sounds pretty crappy. If I was actually going to do this song, even though I don't really sing, I would probably do it in a lower key because I could sing it better, at least more easily in a lower key. Now, the other thing that I was going to mention, if you find playing some of these, like if you're going to, practice barring that A, I find that I have to throw my middle finger over the top of it. I can't, too hard to do it that way, so I got to kind of squeeze it, and it probably, maybe even more than my middle finger. I might be using like all my fingers. The other thing that you can do, just for practice, especially when maybe if you decide to try this new part on the arrangement and it's a little hard, you could capo on the first fret and play everything, a half step higher, because generally when you have it capoed, it's a little easier to press down. And if you're playing if you have your ovation tuned to the E, I don't know if you're using the ovation in the alternate tuning, or you're just tuning your Martin and living with that. The ovation, because of the wider neck, it's a little bit more difficult for me to bar on it. So, but I can do it. But that's just a thought. You can always put on the capo and then just, play it with the capo, move it up a fret, or even put the capo on the second fret, which might be a little easier even then. So I know this is a bit rambling, but it is important stuff I wanted to talk about. So just to review, we have the Doc Watson version where they use the A chord. And then we talked about Buckets of Rain, the Dylan version, the rock version, essentially having the 3 parts, the intro, the vocal, and then the little solo part. After that, it's the same. That just takes the place of this. Instead of that, we have this. Okay? And then the final thing we talked about was, if you wanted to, you could use that alternate version on playing the arrangement. Once again, the counting there. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. after that and, gotta be right back down on that one. Hope that made sense. Said it was a little bit rambling, kind of hard to put all those three ideas together in a coherent way, but you know you're always free to ask. If you don't ask, I assume that somehow I managed to get my point across. So we'll pick it up from there. Maybe talk a little bit more about the E blues, or I may even look at doing this in a different key, because you know we love to do that too, just to stress the music and the song and not be focusing too much on the technical. Now the technical is important, I realize that, but the reason I bring this up so often is too many people when they're learning get too hung up on the technical and not really the music, when the music is really so much more important. Your technical playing will flourish better if the musical aspect, the artistic aspect of the song is well ingrained in you. That's part of the singing. I do tend to repeat myself, don't I? Have a good one. Bye.